Welcome to the Real Business Lifetime Lessons podcast, where small business leaders get real about grit, growth, and leadership. Today, we have a special international guest, Max Lamothe. Max is the founder of NUBES, a boutique air charter company blending luxury travel with curated experiences. With a background that spans luxury hospitality, event management, and private aviation, plus a recent leap into entrepreneurship, Max brings a unique lens to building a brand that balances creative flair and logistical precision. In today's conversation, we dig into the lessons he's learning in real time as he builds his company from the ground up. Max, thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, it's nice being here.
Let's start with your story. You spent years in the aviation and hospitality industries before launching Noobs. What was the turning point that made you decide to go out on your own?
Yeah, I think after almost a decade working in the aviation industry and hospitality industry, I realized that I was solving other people's problems that I didn't create. So I figured, you know what, let's jump into something, build something on my own. And then as I'm trying to solve problems or issues, they're mine and it's my own doing and the fruits of my own labor. So that's what threw me into going to it on my own. In terms of the private aviation or the brokerage specific, I realized that there was a white space in the market where it wasn't necessarily curated or there wasn't a vibe. It was very stale and outdated. And I figured let's bring some style to the industry, and that's what led me to it.
You've worked in everything from five-star hotels to private jets and major events. How have those different environments shaped the way you think about service, customer service, and leadership?
I think globally, each of those industries are very specific in terms of what customer service means. In terms of hospitality, it's about being consistent. When you check in at one hotel in New York versus a hotel in Los Angeles, but you're going to the same brand, you're expecting that same consistency within the hospitality industry. Within private aviation, everything is about precision, on-time departure, on-time landing, route plans, catering at specific times. Then with event management, it's all about a vibe. You want the best party, the best experience when you walk into the room. And so bringing all three together is what I've felt is the necessary part. And how I want to lead a team in that is you have to understand that all of those three concepts in terms of delivering that customer service.
Tell us about launching Noobs. What was your first bold move? What felt like the scariest part of taking that leap?
Yeah, I think led me to it was just the missing of the action of terms of being in private aviation. There's a thrill of taking off a plane. It's like everyone gets a bit nervous before a flight. Well, for me, it was the excitement of booking a flight, the excitement of the sale, but then also creating something that is specific to me and matches my personality and my brand. I think first bold move of launching it was announcing it. So like any other brand or any other concept that I think any entrepreneur goes through is you have this idea and you build this idea in your mind without really announcing it to the world. You're doing research, you're building a website in the background or in the shadows, and you're doing all these things to set up to the day of the launch. And I remember, I think it was 3 months between the day I thought of Noobs and then the day I announced it publicly in terms of on LinkedIn. And I remember that day where I launched it to the industry, I was like, do I do it? Do I not do it? It was a lot of is this the moment I click launch on, the website and going live? I remember even something went wrong one day with that launch and I was like, okay, I'm just not going to do it. And I called my best friend and my best friend's like, no, just push it an hour. Like no one knows what's going on. You're the only person who knows what's going on. And that nervousness is within it. The first bold move was launching it because then you don't really know how people are going to react to you coming back into an industry. So I think that was definitely the hardest part or the boldest part. And then the emails come flooding through after of congrats and we're proud of you and can't wait to see where this goes. And that first step is the hardest one. I think, the scariest part is losing that corporate cushion, right? It's losing that, I can fall back on something else or I can, there's a steady paycheck or there's whatever. And you're just like, okay, I'm in it now. And now it's just keeping yourself going forward.
Well, I am sure that if you change your mind, the corporate world would have space for you. But the thing is even in the corporate world, it feels like a cushion, but it's not. Like the company could get bought and restructure any day, and your role could be gone. So there's risk on both sides of that.
Definitely. I think on the corporate world, and I see it every day. I have a lot of friends who work in tech and, so people are like losing their jobs every 4 months. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's a crazy roller coaster to be on. So I'm very fortunate that I now get to just control that. Even though it's not consistent because it's still early days, I get control of the outcome of what I'm going to get. So whatever I put in, I get back, and I'm controlling that destiny.
Through your corporate experience, you've managed everything from logistics to branding to talent. How do you keep your strategic side grounded while still staying creatively inspired?
I think they go hand in hand in terms of strategy and creativity, because you have to be creative to deliver on a strategy that will make you stand out from the rest of everyone else. So strategy without style is boring and no one's going to really get it. But then you can have a bunch of style but no structure, and you just look like someone who's flailing their arms all over the place. So I think it's treating them equally is important, but then finding ways to experience them. So for myself, I'll design my work week where creatively we're all in, let's go sprint, and then build either the brand or build the project, whether it's online campaign or whatever. But then I'll spend time after creatively putting it together to build the strategy out. Does this make sense? To how do we get from A to B and then to C? And so I take a longer time on the strategy to plan out all that was going on in my brain creatively.
Managing our brains is one of the most challenging parts of running a business or being a creative. And
Also about knowing not when to not turn off the brain, but to let other things in. So for me, it's travel. So it's not disconnecting from my phone necessarily, but it's like, okay, let me change space for a minute. So I go between different cities a lot. And it's spending time at a different cafe. It's spending time seeing different aspects of a city or a restaurant, or just walking down and through a different mall to see how people are designing hotels, whether it's architecture or interior design or whatever. And it lets you change your perception a bit more.
well, on that note, you split your time between Montreal and New York, but you work globally. What are the rewards and the biggest challenges of growing a business across international borders?
Biggest reward for sure is the opportunity to expand quickly and your name to get out into different industries, but then also different markets. The challenge, and I'd say it's definitely the biggest challenge that no one really tells you about and you learn as an entrepreneur, is navigating tax and legal systems. Because although I have corporations in a few different cities and countries, they don't really match each other. So you have to navigate those independently if you don't have experience in that, which I don't. So I rely heavily on my friends and colleagues who work in that industry to make sure I'm doing everything properly and compliant, because the last thing I want is to get chased down by any government.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember I briefly moved from South Carolina to North Carolina and expanded my business into those two areas, which is why most of our guests are from and even just going across that state line, the differences in the way that structuring the business and making sure I'm staying compliant from one state to the next. I can not really wrap my head around the idea of trying to do that from one country to the next.
And even statewide, I can be registered in one state, but then Florida operates a different way than New York with certain things and taxes. And in chartering aircraft, there's a tax for different things, whether it's like, well, you're picking up a passenger in this state and going to that state. Well, there's a different tax for that. Especially with international clients and international routings, it's about being clear on, what you're offering, where the value's at, and then creating any confusion for your client. Because I think a lot of people are very local when they come to business. Okay, this is what I'm offering. But when I'm offering a flight from here to Dubai, I have to be ready to answer every question.
So I would imagine also really relying heavily on your relationships and building network makes it more realistic to navigate those challenges.
Yeah.
What's something unexpected you've had to learn as a new founder that no one really prepared you for? I guess outside of the tax and the logistics of it.
I don't think it's something unexpected, because you hear about it a lot in terms of if you listen to different podcasts or read books or even speak to other founders and entrepreneurs, no one's going to save you. This is your game. This is your livelihood. And very rarely will someone give you like a tap on the back and like, hey, good job on that piece of work where you like put a lot of work in. If you do something for a client, your client might thank you for the service you gave them. But if you just hammered out 10 hours of admin, no one's gonna be like, good job on that admin. So I think that's like not unexpected, but it's definitely like one of those things where you're not getting measured, where if you were in the corporate world, you just hammered out a great project for someone internally, you might get that recognition. And I think it's also learning certain things such as like actionism and like speed and feedback, because some things don't need to be 1,000% correct when you're a founder. You might think it needs to be 1,000% correct, but if no one's going to see it, and it's just to get you over the line, it's to send that pitch to someone, and it doesn't need to be that perfect pitch. It's just to get yourself out there. I think that's where you have to unlearn being perfect is not necessarily the way to success.
Well, particularly if you're selling or pitching something, now you have to be accurate. You have to know your product, but you're always going to know more than what your potential customer client's going to know. They're already looking at you as an expert. So you have to learn to give yourself that little bit of grace. As somebody who's not brand new in my industry, and you're not brand new in yours, but your company is new. Also learning that good enough and done is often better than perfect but incomplete.
Exactly. Yeah. And I
Because
think
there's another task waiting for you then when you get done with that one. So
that's the thing. The to-do list is never done. So it's how do I get through this to-do list so that I'm not cutting corners, but that it's done.
we talk a lot on this podcast about relationship currency. In your world, how important are relationships to your clients, vendors, and collaborators? And how do you cultivate trust amongst your networks?
I think, I think it's in the name of the type of business we're in. Like I'm a broker, so it's in the definition. I'm putting two people or a buyer and a seller together, and I have to act as the middleman, which is a communicator and relationship builder. So I think the biggest thing in the industry is if you can't buy, you can't sell. So if you can't buy from a vendor and a vendor can't trust you to give you pricing and can't trust you to communicate their service offering or their product properly, you won't be able to sell that to anyone. The buyers will smell that off of you. They will be like, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what this plane can do or what the rules are at the airport, or customs agents are not going to allow us in, and that kind of thing. So for me, it's multifaceted because I want my clients to know that I know all the rules there are about customs. Same thing with my vendor. I want them to know that I have real clients. They're not just people who are coming to shop and just want a price and blah, blah. Max comes to us with real requests. They're qualified requests. We're not going to waste our time quoting Max on certain things because there's a lot of people out there who don't book. So it's building that trust between both so that people know that when I come with things, they're real. It's a real aircraft. I've done the checks and balances of the airport is open at that hour. And that's realistically the only way I can be successful is through my relationships with the industry.
That's what I do too. I don't sell travel and travel experience. I'm an insurance broker, but I need to be able to tell you the difference between this company and that company and why this policy makes more sense than that one. And I take it the same way when I speak with my managers at my insurance companies. Every time I get a new sales rep, particularly with Blue Cross, which is a major company that we represent, I will let them know I'm not going to call you with a small problem. I can solve that one on my own. If I'm texting you, I really do need an answer today. I usually say I'm not even going to get impatient unless there's a comma involved. We get a comma involved in the pricing and an error there, then we really got to take that seriously. And I'm imagining on your end, we're talking a couple of commas.
Of
the
commas,
idea
exactly.
of showing respect on both sides of that relationship.
In aviation, they say you can plan everything, but then everything you plan for will not actually happen, and every plan C is essentially what's going to happen. You're figuring it out as you go. And for me, it's supplier will answer the phone at night, on the weekends or whatever, because our flight's leaving on Sunday morning. Each one is going to be able to pick up the phone and also will pick up the phone because they see, oh, Max is calling. This must be important. It's not just another broker trying to call us for some weird pipe dream flight. And this is a real request. And that's why I have clients who call me on evenings and weekends because they're like, I know Max will get me an option within an hour. The price will make sense and we trust it. So.
A part of the purpose of this podcast is to help people who are new in their industry or new in their business journey. And with you being within your first year of launching your own business, what's one win and one mistake that you'd be willing to share with somebody else who's freshly starting out?
I think wins are sometimes the smallest things as well. You can book a client and you make a good deal and you get a sale, and that's a win. I think for me, the small wins is the feedback of a properly executed brand and website. So for me, that was a huge win because I'd never done this type of creative project of building a website and building the whole brand and a story behind the brand, and recognition from people within the industry, within the media, travel industry. They were like, oh, this is a sick website. You did a really good job. To me, that was a win. Time I put into developing the idea came to fruition, and I got like a little stamp of approval when I presented it to the industry. So definitely a win. And I think that's where it says a lot to any listener or any entrepreneur is don't focus on the thing that you're really good at, and focus on something that you want to explore and what you think is going to make you stand out, because I think that's where you might discover why you're going to be such a good entrepreneur. Getting yourself outside of your own comfort zone of, for me, it's sales. So how else do I do something else? Mistake was hand in hand, but don't try to do too much by myself. So, ads, for example, I tried doing on my own, and then I realized nothing was really coming about. I reached out to this agency that helps with like pay-per-click and Google ads, and night and day for this smaller investment, they came out with like a full strategy. They built it all out because I trusted someone and an agency or people who do what they do best. Just like they would maybe call me if they needed a private jet, I called them for the Google ads stuff. Delegate on certain aspects that could be very tedious, but you'll see a lot of rewards.
That's actually a mistake I made in my own ownership journey, was I waited entirely too long to hire certain types of help. And whether that means hiring my first admin assistant, which I should have probably done 3 years before I did, or realizing that it's like it is cheaper actually for me to spend the money for somebody who knows how to do this and do this well than for me to take hours of my own time, which is valuable in a different sense. I think that's a very, very valuable lesson for somebody who is serious about growing their business to learn early. Is you don't want to throw money at something that you don't have, but learning when it is a good investment of your dollars versus your time.
Yeah, I think it took me 5 months to realize that there were certain things that I was wasting too much time on. There's services out there that you can like consult it on, but there's a lot of agencies who are out there to help entrepreneurs build and do startup packages and pay per, return. So it's figuring out what you need to save time.
And along with learning what is a good use of your time and what is not a good use of your time, we talk about the concept of mental stamina. You've talked about leaving a big company for your own sanity and starting your own project. How do you stay grounded through the emotional highs and lows of building something new?
The highs and lows are pretty crazy. I left my old company just because, again, I needed space for myself and I needed time to, put myself first. I think now that I have put myself first and every day I wake up and I've got NUBES and other projects going on, like this is definitely I lead the charge on my day. But there's sometimes you're like, am I really doing this right? Am I not doing this right? Am I at the goal that I set myself for the first 6 months or the first 10 months? Taking those breaks to avoid burnout, and use the word burnout interestingly because it could work 80 hours, 100 hours and feel nothing. But then some days it's just a nice day outside and you're like, let me go for a bike ride. Let me go for a 3-hour bike ride and just disconnect, not think about the hundreds of emails I just woke up to. That just resets me. Let's put on a good playlist, go for a bike ride, and we're good to go. Not taking yourself too seriously as well. If you've launched yourself into entrepreneurship, you have to believe in yourself that you're doing the right thing and that you are seeing success in it. And even if you're not maybe seeing the dollars come in or the turnover that you're hoping for, I think you just have to keep working at it because it won't happen overnight, but you have to let yourself live your life as well.
I had to spend a lot of money working with a business coach on this about 10 years ago. Your customers expect you to be a real person. They don't actually expect you to be working 24/7, even if you're willing to commit 20. And so one of the principles that I had to learn and I model for my staff is actually time for that bike ride. That's one of the first things that goes onto my calendar, even before I start booking certain types of meetings, because that time for taking care of yourself isn't going to magically appear. You have to prioritize it just like you would the other aspects, because if you're running and leading your company, you are an asset to your company. And so you owe it to your company and your customers to take care of yourself as part of that process.
If you're constantly in survival mode, you're not going to get anywhere. You're constantly just like get me out of this hole, it's not gonna.
Do you think that, or how would you say that your leadership style has evolved in the last year? And what does it look like when you are at your best as a leader?
I think prior to me launching my business, when I was leading a team, the goal or the focus was on let's over deliver and prove that I belong here and prove that I should be managing these people. It was this very carrot stick situation. Now my leadership is very different because I've now entered into leadership my peers and not employees. So it's more of how do I look at my best? Do I have the right vision? Am I calm and executing things the way I want to? And am I empowering myself, but also my friends and peers to be as successful as I am without necessarily controlling every little aspect? So if there's no micromanagement, how do we all push each other forward? It's having just open conversations. Oh, maybe I would do it this way. Or, hey, I'm having this issue with this. How have you handled this situation in the past? So it's pushing each other forward versus looking at things that are maybe going wrong. So I think that's where the evolving has gone, is because I've now myself in different roles, whether it's doing a ton of admin, doing pay-per-click marketing, doing branding, doing sales. Everyone's got something going on.
Yeah. Learning from your peers or finding other business leaders around you to help you just keep things in perspective, if nothing else. It's so easy to be in a silo or a tunnel when you're trying to grow your own thing. If you were talking to someone who's listening and dreaming about launching their own thing, maybe in your space, in the travel event space, maybe in a totally different industry, what's one truth you'd want them to hold on to?
One truth is tough because there's so many things when you go into launching a business because you're putting yourself out there and it's very scary because you're hiding behind this shield that is called brand or corporation. You become that brand, that corporation. No need to sharpen the pitch or sharpen the brand, but you're allowed to be authentically yourself and to build differently. That's the truth. A lot of people can say that's not how it's done, or that's not how we communicate things. Well, I'm going to try my way. By trying your way, clients and vendors start respecting it more because you're doing it the way you see fit for yourself, as long as you obviously respect all the laws and blah, blah, blah. But you're putting yourself out there, so people will respect that. They're being themselves, or they're trying to be this version of themselves, and people respect that as opposed to you're just another number in some grayscale business.
I would also add that, it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there and do that. The people within the community that are going to become part of your community as a customer or as a supporter, they want to see you win. Leaders want to see other leaders win. If they're not willing to help, especially if they're in the same business space, they probably have work to do on themselves. And that doesn't
Absolutely.
mean you give away trade secrets, but another younger woman comes to me and she's just gotten her insurance license. It's easier for me to share what I've learned along the way than to go, oh, I'm not going to tell you that because you might take a customer from me. There should be plenty of business for all of us.
It's not about being the loudest, it's about being the clearest and most consistent.
Is there a particular book or YouTube channel or podcast that has really helped you through your journey, both as an entrepreneur and through the years of leadership you have before that, that you would want to share with our listeners?
Favorite podcast when it comes to business, decision making, that kind of stuff, and that's very relevant these days, is Diary of the CEO, where there's always different guests, and sometimes it's not even a CEO, but sometimes it's a DJ, sometimes it's a therapist, and it just teaches about different aspects of life. It's an easy one to just have on while you're on the treadmill.
How would our listeners connect with you either on social and your company and your brand if they wanted to reach out?
So flynubes.com is my website. My Instagram is flynoobs_. And then my personal is Max Lamothe. So MAXLAMOTHE on Instagram or LinkedIn. If there's ever, an opportunity for collaboration or even just questions on how I was able to set up my business in different states and countries, happy to be a resource.
Fantastic. Is there any other parting advice you might want to give to somebody who is in the entrepreneurial space?
If whoever's listening and they're teetering on going into it, I would say go for it, because if it's your brain and you're constantly thinking about it, just go for it. And it might not work the first time. I've had different business ideas through my life, but one point one will work if you believe in it. So just keep believing in yourself.